Thank you for joining us tonight for the 2020 Preservation Achievement Awards. I'm David Preziosi, Executive Director of Preservation Dallas, coming to you from our home, the 1899 Wilson House. As you know, we have had to change things up a bit this year and are pleased to be able to bring you the awards event directly to your home or wherever you are right now. This year, our celebration will be virtual, but no less powerful in showcasing the amazing projects and people we are celebrating tonight. And now, from our house to your house, let us go inside and get things started.
Welcome everyone to the Wilson House. I'm John Brown, the current board president of Preservation Dallas. This is the 21st year that Preservation Dallas has recognized successful preservation projects and people involved in historic preservation efforts. To date, we've given out 285 awards. This year, we will be adding 21 to that number with awards for extraordinary efforts by those who've worked diligently to invigorate the historic places of Dallas. And we thank them for their incredible effort and work. As owners, developers, architects, contractors, residents, and supporters, you help to preserve the unique places that make Dallas a special place. This year, our impressive list of award-winning projects was selected by a jury of Melissa Pricer, Tanya Reagan, and Alicia Quintans. It is also my privilege to recognize our sponsors for the evening listed on your screen. We are truly grateful for their incredible contribution to this amazing event and the mission of Preservation Dallas. Before we get started with the awards, we have a very special tribute to Virginia Savage McAllister, a preservation icon in Dallas who passed away earlier this year. Let's hear from Catherine Seal, former Executive Director of Preservation Dallas, former Landmark Commission Chair, and a friend of Virginia's, to hear about Virginia's legacy.
Field Guide to American Houses is the nation's compendium of residential architectural styles. It was published in 1984, revised and expanded in 2013, and it is still considered the authority on American housing styles. Its author, Virginia Savage McAllister, whom we lost in April this year, knew housing styles better than anyone, both in the academic sense and also the intangible value these historic homes offer. The guide actually came about to solve a very practical problem for someone trying to preserve their neighborhood. In the early 1970s, Virginia and her neighbors began working with the city to preserve Swiss Avenue. The neighborhood was lined with grand but decaying revivalist-style houses and threatened with incompatible new construction. It was surrounded with 1,200 acres zoned for apartments. It was redlined by lenders and full of condemned houses. The city suggested the neighborhoods create a historic district, which required a survey of the houses. Well, not only did Virginia succeed in preserving her neighborhood and creating Dallas's first historic district, she published the Field Guide so that others could do the same. Virginia spent 6 years researching, writing the guide, drawing initial sketches of all the illustrations, and shooting a third of the 1,200 photographs herself. Much has been written about the Field Guide. It's used as a university textbook, and it's the standard cited for use in the identification and evaluation of styles for historical architectural surveys and ordinances nationwide. The Journal of Architectural Historians wrote, "It's the best field guide to American residential architecture that's ever been published and likely to remain so for many years." After designating Swiss Avenue and founding today's Preservation Dallas, twice president, Virginia wanted to save adjacent Munger Place. With 90% absentee ownership and 30% of its houses red tagged for demolition, the city pronounced Munger Place unsalvageable. With the guidance of the National Trust, she organized and managed a revolving fund. And as volunteer, she personally oversaw all aspects of purchase, protection, and resale of 26 houses. The fund worked with the Federal National Mortgage Association to develop the agency's first intercity loan program. And this became a national model and opened Fannie Mae lending to older neighborhoods nationwide. Virginia chaired Preservation Dallas's In-Town Living Center in 1995 to assist older neighborhoods citywide. She raised $575,000 to obtain and create a program. And its success led her to undertake yet another Preservation Dallas program, the Discover Dallas Survey. After training hundreds of volunteers to research and document structures, numerous commercial buildings, and over 20 neighborhoods, many of which became conservation districts. And this is where I met Virginia. She took me under her wing, as I imagine many of you hearing this tonight might say the same. Virginia was both genteel and a warrior, and she took on our issues as if they were her own. When Fair Park, site of the 1936 Texas Centennial, was endangered in the mid-1980s, Virginia founded Friends of Fair Park almost single-handedly and was its first president. During the 12 years she served on the board, the group obtained funds to restore William Lascaz's Magnolia Lounge, gained National Historic Landmark status, and raised $100 million in restoration funds. Virginia was active in local preservation issues her entire life, and Dallas has a greater sense of itself because of her efforts to save elements of the past for the present and future. And it's really what preservation is all about. Despite the importance of her activism, it's undoubtedly her books where we will find her legacy. Her first book, The Making of a Historic District, Swiss Avenue, which she wrote with Lynn Dunsavage, and The Field Guide are the two that have had the broadest impact. And so Virginia's work lives on. She gives us not just an understanding of architectural styles. No, it's much more than that. She gives us a portal to view the larger universe and our place within it. And in a world with so much uncertainty, it's our identity and sense of place that carry us forward. And on a personal note, she was my mentor and one of my most cherished friends in Dallas. Virginia was an icon in our city and nationally with her incredible work, and she'll truly be missed. To learn more about Virginia Savage McAllister, please go to preservationdallas.org. You can find out about a neighborhood tribute to Virginia organized by our friends and neighbors and ways in which you can contribute to her memory.
Thank you, Catherine, for that incredible tribute to Virginia, who was truly a legend and an important part of Preservation in Dallas, Preservation Dallas, and a huge part of why we call the Wilson House our own. Tonight, we have several categories of awards, including residential, commercial, or institutional, new construction, special recognition, and of course, the presentation of the 2020 honoree. And now, Preservation Dallas board member Norman Alston will present the awards for residential rehabilitation.
Good evening, everyone. We have a number of spectacular residential projects to recognize this evening, so let's dive right in. Our first award winner is the Gertrude and Olin Patillo House, 211 North Rosemont. This Gwinnett Heights Prairie Foursquare was built in 1916 for Olin L. Patillo, an insurance agent with the firm of Reinhardt, Patillo, and Reinhardt, and was one of the first to be built on North Rosemont. In February 2018, neighborhood resident and renovation contractor Isaac Martinez and his wife Sarah purchased the property from its longtime owner. Isaac and Sarah initially planned to renovate the home for themselves. However, after Bill and Judy Cummings drove by the house, they fell in love with it and decided it was to be their dream home. They quickly convinced Isaac and Sarah to sell it to them. With historic photos as a guide, the Cummings recruited their favorite Houston home designer, Emiliano Zazueta, to assist them while also convincing Isaac to continue as their contractor. The Cummings' daughter, Kate Thacker of Kate Thacker Homes, and Chris Childs of Childs Designs filled out the team for this huge project. The Landmark Commission approved the entire renovation, including the porch that was rebuilt based on the vintage photos. The interior began its metamorphosis with the removal of decades of debris and decay. Then a wall was opened up to expose the original staircase. Just a remnant of the original banister remained, and it was carefully removed and replicated. The crumbling brick fireplace was refaced with decorative tile. 5 amazing historic beveled glass doors were reinstalled. All the original 5/1 windows were restored. A stunning new period-sensitive kitchen was created in what is believed to be the original kitchen location. The renovation of this long-neglected structure exemplifies the power of falling in love with an historic house and, through sensitive renovation, how it can be converted to the dream home Bill and Judy Cummings had first envisioned. Next up, the Mayor George Sargent House, also known as the Mayor's Restaurant, 635 North Zang Boulevard. This historic Oak Cliff property was once the home of Mayor George Sargent. He served from 1935 to 1936, during the time when Fair Park was turned into an Art Deco masterpiece to host the 1936 Texas Centennial Exposition. Sargent shared the home with his wife and son, but after his death in 1971, the house was first left to his son and then ultimately to a caretaker. In the middle of an area rife with new development, Jim Lake purchased the house to save it from demolition. The house also came with Sargent's well-preserved legal library, many historical letters and documents, including a personal letter from Eleanor Roosevelt. Appropriately, there was also memorabilia from the 1936 Centennial Exhibition. The Sargents had hosted President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, his wife Eleanor, and Texas Governor James Allred for lemonade on the front porch of this house when they were in town to dedicate the Texas Centennial. Aside from the evident cosmetic obstacles, the full-scale renovation of the two-story structure brought many challenges that delayed construction and zoning issues, which pushed back the completion date multiple times. Unfortunately, for safety reasons, the rear portion of the house had to be demolished. The renovation project involved a total overhaul that included the rebuilding of the rear addition for the kitchen and the restrooms. A new outdoor patio space was added with a pathway to the front entrance created out of salvaged bricks from the 115-year-old Ambassador Hotel that burned in May of 2019. Reconstruction was completed at the end of 2019, and the new restaurant operator hopes to open the Mayor's House restaurant as soon as pandemic conditions allow. Thanks to Jim Lake, it will be a fitting tribute to a man who guided the city of Dallas as it prepared to host the Texas Centennial Exposition. Now we move to the Cleo and Jack New Delman House, 710 Dumas. Shortly after they were married, Cleo and Jack New Delman purchased this charming 1921 bungalow in order to be close to her parents on Swiss Avenue. They lived there through the mid-1930s. Then the home went through a few more owners until widow Eula Mae Hester bought the house about 1957. Her daughter Virginia remained in the home until only a few years ago. In 2010, Tam Pham of Steel-Toed Stiletto purchased the house and began an extensive renovation. The vinyl siding and vegetation that had overgrown the front porch was removed to reveal the home's true character. Fortunately, many other original elements remained intact, but the property needed some serious repairs. Foundation issues were especially evident in the exterior brick. The foundation movement also meant problems for the operation of many of the doors, as most older homeowners know well. And the original wood windows, still mostly intact, needed a great deal of work. Tam brought in a colleague from North Carolina who is a window and door expert. They set up an assembly line to tackle the needed window repairs. Original wavy glass was reused, as were the original wood sashes. It wasn't long before all of the double hung windows were restored and in working order. All of the interior and exterior bevel glass doors were cleaned and repaired to operate properly following the foundation repairs. A set of matching bevel glass French doors were uncovered and repaired, allowing natural light to flood the parlor. Threadbare carpet glued directly on the floor throughout the house was carefully scraped away, revealing the original hardwood floors. The floors were repaired, sanded, and refinished. Tam Pham finished reviving the house in late 2019, and this charming gem of the New Delman family quickly sold to a new owner who will enjoy it for years to come. Our next winner is the Florence and William H. Patterson House, also known as the Gaston, 4802 Gaston Avenue. William Patterson came to Dallas in the late 1870s and opened a pharmacy downtown. Later, he became a manager for Missouri State Life Insurance. Patterson and wife Florence bought this brand new four-square on Gaston Avenue in 1913 when he was 60 years old. It was advertised as a splendid 9-room house in the center of aristocratic Dallas. They lived there for several years, but ultimately sold it about 1919. Owner occupied for the next decade, it became a boarding house during the Great Depression and was eventually subdivided into 12 rooms. As the resources of the clientele declined, so went the house. One resident was even arrested for armed robbery of the Oak Cliff Lone Star gas office in 1953. Things began to look up when the Munger Place National Register Historic District was established in 1977. Although the house was just outside the district, it was remodeled and marketed in 1981 as an historic district property suitable for either single family or office use. The property flipped several times during the 1990s and early 2000s before being purchased in 2017 by siblings Liz and Mike Gibson. Liz undertook a complete renovation of the house for use as a bed and breakfast. Although the previous renovation had left the house in fairly good condition, substantial work was needed to prepare it to welcome guests. 5 individually themed bedrooms, each with a private bath, are located upstairs. The downstairs features a dining room, sunroom, and speakeasy cocktail lounge. Each room is Dallas themed and contains an abundance of historic decorative features, many lovingly sourced from Orr Reed Wrecking Company. Thanks to Liz and Mike Gibson, the Gaston opened in 2020, ready to host weddings, corporate retreats, and travelers who long for a unique and comfy home away from home. It's time now to show you the Carrie Marcus Neiman House, 5803 Swiss Avenue. No, I did not say that wrong. Dubbed the Neiman Marcus House, this Swiss Avenue home was constructed in 1922 for Carrie and Al Neiman. The couple, along with her brother Herbert Marcus, established the legendary Neiman Marcus store in 1907. The Neiman's relationship, however, was not as successful, and the couple divorced in 1928. Carrie Neiman continued to live in the house until her death in 1953. Jack and Bobby Toplitz purchased the house from Mrs. Neiman's estate and in 1982 updated and redecorated the house, which was featured in the Swiss Avenue home tour in 1984. Between 2015 and 2018, the current owner, Stephanie Harvell, restored the home with assistance from her father, contractor Scott Harvell. On the exterior, the brickwork was repaired and new light fixtures were installed. The entire sidewalk along the property was replaced and new landscaping now sets off this historic home. One of the biggest jobs was reworking all 82 of the original windows. Each window was also fitted with handcrafted wood shutters on the interior. Restoration of the stunning stained glass window in the stairwell was a major accomplishment. All interior floors and walls were refinished, the electrical wiring and plumbing lines were replaced, and new insulation was added. A new, more appropriate kitchen has replaced the 1980s kitchen remodel. Antique shops and estate sales were sourced for parts, including the 1920s porcelain and brass door handles for the original dining room doors, as well as a set of 1930s outdoor lanterns. Both Stephanie Harvell and her father gained a new appreciation for older houses and the process of historic renovation work. The goal was to maintain the original beauty and charm of this piece of Dallas architectural history, and they did just that while placing their own stamp on the home's rich history. So, staying on Swiss Avenue, let's visit the Addi and WA Greenhouse, 5125 Swiss. This handsome Swiss Avenue Mission Revival house was constructed in 1915 for the W.A. Green family, who ran a dry goods store in downtown Dallas. The new house had many innovative features for the first time, including fireproof exterior walls made of structural tile, steam heat instead of the more typical coal, and a flat tar roof. The Green family sold the house in 1927, and over the next 75 years, it had more than 12 different owners. The current owners, Elizabeth Polanco and Jeff Bryan, purchased the home in 2002 and worked with architect Darren Tapscott to extensively refurbish the home. In 2012, the hailstorm that devastated many homes along Swiss also destroyed this home's flat roof and its Ludovici tile apron. The underwriter stalled the insurance claim for several years, and repair work had just begun when the house celebrated its 100th birthday. In June of 2015, a single storm cloud dropped 4.5 inches of rain on the uncovered roof, turning the staircase into a waterfall. Within 24 hours, 6 plaster ceilings collapsed and every painted surface blistered, and the quarter sawn oak floors all cupped. With that damage, the owners once again had to embark on a total refurbishment and hired Tapscott once again to help. Every piece of original trim and cabinetry was either removed or stripped in place. Non-original items were rethought and rebuilt to acknowledge and differentiate from the original house. In the process, the foundation was leveled, the plumbing, electrical, and mechanical systems were replaced. Energy efficiency was incorporated with insulation upgraded in the exterior walls. The HVAC system was resized, LED light fixtures installed, and a tankless hot water system was added. The time for the total reconstruction was 2 years, and the house is now ready to enjoy its second century, thanks to Elizabeth Polanco and Jeff Bryan. That brings us to the Labello House, 5106 Spring Meadow Drive. In 1962, Charles Dilbeck designed a distinctive home for local developer Sam Labello Jr. and his wife Margaret, nestled into a cul-de-sac in Russwood Acres. At 8,800 square feet, the house is one of his boldest contemporary designs while still comprising his idiosyncratic ranch style. Details included rough stone walls that came up all the way to the windowsills, a wood-shake gabled roof, broad beams, and stone supports, which emphasized the home's size. Homeowners Mike and Stacy Giesler purchased the home and enjoyed Dilbeck's design until 2016, when a fire completely destroyed the house. While many would walk away or design a brand new home, they decided to rebuild the house like it was. Dros Rainey Architecture was hired to use Dilbeck's original blueprints to draw up new ones, with some slight modifications along the way to accommodate modern living. Rainey and Maple Hill Residential brought it all back to life. The stone was salvaged from the fire, along with bits and pieces of woodwork, cabinet doors, and anything else that had survived and could be used as a guide for the reconstruction. Special attention was given to the incredible woodwork in the house, and the show-stopping hand-carved front door was recreated based on historic photographs. Pecky cypress was once again used on the outside to complement the rough texture of the walls, rebuilt from the original stone. Thanks to the Gieslers, an incredible Charles Dilbeck design has literally risen from the ashes. One of the testaments to the work is the fact that when the Labello family members came to see the house, they marveled at how closely the home looked to when they lived there. The painstaking work to get the house just right and embody Dilbeck's original design while bringing it into the new century shows and will last for generations thanks to the Gieslers. Congratulations to all of our amazing winners in the residential category. And now, fellow Preservation Dallas board member Vanessa Baker will present the next set of awards.
Thank you, Norman. I am pleased to present tonight the Commercial or Industrial Rehabilitation or Adaptive Use Projects. Let's get started. Eagle Ford School, 1601 Chalk Hill Road. Eagle Ford School is one of Dallas's most unique historic schools and an excellent example of the Gothic revival style with its pointed arch openings, battlements, and window hoods. The school served communities including Eagle Ford, the residential compound maintained for Trinity Portland Cement Company workers, Arcadia Park, and rural western Dallas County. The school was naturally constructed of cement, with Trinity providing building materials and area residents assisting with the construction. The walls are 14-inch to 16-inch thick, made from 2 layers of cement brick with 6-inch of cement layer between. The school opened in 1924, serving the Mexican American and Anglo population in the area. It contained 4 classrooms and an auditorium. It served as a school until 1948, after which it was used for storage until it was sold in 1965. Vacant and isolated for many years, the building suffered deterioration. The school was threatened with demolition by the owner, and the landmark designation process was initiated to save the school. The building sold in 2017 to Larry Moser, who wanted to bring the school back to life. The foundation was leveled, extensive cracks in the walls repaired, and French drains installed. The bricked-in windows were opened up and new replacement windows installed based on an original window found in the building. Period-appropriate doors were installed as the original ones were gone. Pine flooring was installed to match the 1920s original and era-appropriate elements added. The exterior was also repainted. Thanks to Larry Moser, the old Eagle Ford School has a new life, this time as an event space, ready for new memories while still keeping the old memories of the former Eagle Ford community alive. Lakewood Theater Interior, Bolsky's, 1825 Abrams Road. Built in 1939, the Lakewood Theater has long served as a symbol of the cultural center for East Dallas. It ceased regular theater operations in the late 1900s and by 2015 was vacant. Following a community outcry concerning its future, the Lakewood owners and the community worked together to secure Dallas landmark designation for the building. In 2018, the Lakewood underwent a Preservation Achievement Award-winning restoration of the exterior in anticipation of a new tenant. The building's interior needed extensive environmental abatement work after asbestos was found, requiring removal of most of the historic ceilings and wall finishes. The resulting interior theater space looked very different. The concern from both the owners and the community was finding a new tenant that could use the space substantially in its historic form without breaking up the great open spaces. The new tenant, Bolsky's, was the vision of a local entrepreneur, Greg Spivey, and his wife, who lived nearby. With the help of architect Norman Alston, they creatively converted the theater into an entertainment venue built around bowling, food, and beverage. The bowling lanes and equipment are even historic, as they are from a closed bowling alley in Mineola. Steel framing to support the lanes allowed the sloped floor to remain underneath and is removable if necessary. The balcony was also retained, and all of this new construction for the games were built on top of the balcony and is reversible. The historic stage and proscenium were retained, and movies can still be shown along with video on a new screen in the area of the original screen. As Norman Alston says, it is the most unifying thing we have in East Dallas, and it's great to have it back. The Spiveys got a strike with bringing the fun back to the Lakewood Theater. Bella Villa Apartments, 5506 Miller. The 1926 three-story brick Bella Villa Apartments in Vickery Place was the only housing of its type built in the neighborhood. It provided single professionals and newlyweds affordable housing on the streetcar line in a desirable middle-class neighborhood. Central to the history and the rehabilitation of the Bella Villa is its original life as the 1917 Vickery Place School. The two-story school closed in 1924 when it was replaced by the larger James Bonham School. For 2 years, the old school sat vacant and then burned. Raul G. Hockett and Eugene L. Roths bought the damaged property in 1926 and hired architects Young and Young to design an apartment building to be constructed on the ruins. Using as much of the damaged school as possible, the new apartments were completed before the end of the year. In 2018, Indio Partners, using tax incentives, undertook a complete rehabilitation of the Bella Villa. The exterior was fully restored with incompatible changes reversed. Interior rehabilitation proved to be a challenge as structural movement of the interior walls resulted in damage to the building's infrastructure, and years of leaks left the interior in an advanced stage of disrepair. Indigo and architects found out that the apartments were constructed directly on top of the basement floor of the Hickory School and without any additional support. Repairs required the complete removal of the flooring at ground level to allow for the installation of new foundations. As part of the interior rehabilitation, the original spatial configurations of the corridors and apartments were retained, except where necessary to upgrade bathrooms and associate secondary spaces. Wood floors, wall finishes, and trim all reflect the original design. Modern electrical, mechanical, and electrical systems were also provided. Thanks to Indigo Partners, the Bella Villa once again has life and welcomes people looking for unique housing in one of the most historic areas of the city. Sharrock Niblo born. For the next project, we have a video which explains the work to the barn of the Sharrock Niblo site, which dates to the mid-1800s when it was settled by Everett Sharrock Jr.
It was part of the Peters colony, and it's one of the earliest developments in this part of the state. And the intent is to make it a city park. The barn is in better condition than the log cabin was, although there are some logs that are seriously deteriorated, and it does have a lean and a certain amount of character to it. But the intent is to preserve as much of it as possible. There will be some partial disassembly that will be required in order to replace those deteriorated logs and the missing logs.
Really, these were held together by gravity. There were no nails used whatsoever in the construction of the barn. They're wood dowels. The barn was originally built for food storage, for primarily corn cribs, though later on in life it was adapted and holes were cut in it for hay storage and eventually for animal storage.
Our preservation effort for the barn will make sure that all those logs stay in place and it maintains as much of its character as possible.
My specialty is barns, taking down old barns and putting them back up. It's lasted for 160 years, but with the kind of pressure that you apply to get the logs out, you just have to be really careful and not to ruin anything or compromise anything at all. It is a little bit difficult just keeping things locked in as you go and doing the joinery to lock the pins in. It's a little bit challenging because we're working from the top down basically versus what you typically normally would do working from the ground up.
I only know of 2 other outbuildings in Texas that were used for storage of cottonseed. So it's a rare building to find. One of the really rare things on the inside is the gates to the bins of each of the cribs are made with wood hinges. And that's extremely rare. And only because that gate or that door is inside the structure is the reason I think it's survived. It's an absolutely spectacular example of a wood hinge.
The city's plan is to turn the Sharrock Niblo farmstead, if you will, into a city park. They'll have parking and nature trails, a museum, a visitor center. I understand right now they're slated to open the park in approximately 2021. Well, I think when it was originally built, it was built from an agricultural standpoint as food and seed storage.
Right.
Later on, it turned into an animal storage area, and they took the floors out of it and obviously cut some openings and doors in it,
Right.
and they were keeping animals in it. This obviously was one of them. People were very educated about how to make something in the wilderness, and that's exactly what they did.
This is the only place you can come in the county of Dallas to come touch history where it happened.
Right.
The oldest history where it happened. We live in a city that loves its bright and it's shining and it's brand new. I don't know if this city truly appreciates things like this the way it should. The fact that this survived, the weather, vandals, a testament to the people who built it and a testament to what they built.
We thank the Park and Recreation Department for stabilizing and preserving one of the earliest historic sites in Dallas County. Dixie Wax Paper Company, or Dixie Co., Tyler Station, 1300 South Polk Street. Louis C. Kimball and William H. Bryce developed a wax paper technology for food storage and preservation in 1922. Under the name Dixie Wax Paper Company, they quickly outgrew their first small plant in Oak Cliff, and in 1924 purchased land near the Gulf, Colorado, and Santa Fe Railway. The original factory was completed in 1925 and for 70 years operated and expanded within the site to become one of America's leading packaging companies. The company moved to Memphis in 1995, and Delta Industries purchased and owned the factory until 2015. In the spring of 2015, Monty Anderson and his investment team purchased the building. Conditions were grim with holes in the roof, standing water, and pigeons. Work began by sealing holes and installation of a new roof. Additions from the 1970s were removed, as were changes to the interior of the original 1925 building. Original features were exposed, including the golden wood roof deck and steel truss system. The original offices retain their original wood and glass doors and moldings. The beauty of the masonry and steel interiors and the original steel sliding fire doors also remained in place. Bricked over original steel windows were uncovered on the South Polk front facade. An accessible entry was added along with a canopy on the north side. Rebranded as Tyler Station after the Dart Station, the former factory site has been adapted for mixed use and serves as a hub for creative and startup businesses. The 18-foot structural grid throughout the factory guides tenant locations and partitions. They are designed to connect lightly to the original structure and can be modified and moved as needs change. Thanks to Monty Anderson and his partners, the repurposed factory is now home to a variety of retail shops. It provides easy access to public transportation and is convenient for both tenants and visitors that have brought this building back to life. Old Municipal Building, UNT College of Law. The old Dallas Municipal Building is an impressive 1914 Beaux-Arts design, which was in use until the current City Hall opened in 1978. The building is also recognized for its connection with the assassination of President Kennedy as the location where Lee Harvey Oswald was interrogated, jailed, and shot in the basement. Originally, the interior of the structure was finished with marble ornamentation, decorative plaster, wood and marble floors, and mahogany woodwork. But in 1957, when the addition was added to the building, it was extensively remodeled. That included the removal of the bulk of the beautiful decorative finishes, the monumental stair, and other character-defining features. While the addition to the building was transformed into city courts, the 1914 portion went unused. As the University of North Texas downtown campus was expanding in downtown Dallas, they looked to the old Municipal Building as the place for their growing College of Law. The project was complex to restore the building's 1914 interior features and adapt it for use as a law school. The still intact building vestibules were restored and used as a model, along with original drawings, in reconstructing the building's public corridors. Drawings and photographic evidence assisted in the accurate reconstruction of the grand stair and second floor corridor, and the original council chamber was restored to its original wood paneled design for use as a classroom. Secondary spaces were compatibly designed to provide state-of-the-art classroom and administrative and mock trial facilities. The rehabilitation work was carefully balanced with the select preservation and interpretation of spaces associated with the 1963 Kennedy assassination. Thanks to the University of North Texas, the interior has been thoughtfully rehabilitated for its new use as a law school, while restoring the 1914 character of the building and respecting the association with national history by preserving the spaces associated with the President Kennedy's assassination. Samuel Grand Aquatic Center, the Cove Aquatic Center, 3201 Samuel Boulevard. The Samuel Grand Pool opened in 1953, designed by architect George E. Christensen, whose firm also designed schools, residences, churches, and several buildings at the Dallas Zoo. Built during the early years of racial integration in the city of Dallas, the bathhouse, as well as other buildings during that time, had minimal changing facilities in an attempt to lower the risk of racial tension at integrated city properties. A unique feature was the use of the roof deck for sunbathing, accessed by a dramatic curved staircase, which gave the facility a fun resort-like vibe. When developing the new Aquatics Center, the Dallas Park and Recreation Department did not require the reuse of the small bathhouse for the new program. However, it served as a catalyst for the location and design of the new, larger bathhouse. Retaining the historic structure kept the connection to the pool's historic roots and provides the new Aquatic Center with a unique facility with mid-century style. The original bathhouse was adequately converted, turning the original ticketing area into a concession space, utilizing the original entry breezeway for a small dining area, and changing the restrooms into family restrooms, keeping the original redwood louver ventilation system. The sunbathing deck was also rehabilitated, which involved extensive structural modification of the railing system, while retaining the original pipe railing design and materials. The new bathhouse, located at 90 degrees to the original bathhouse, was designed to complement and recall the original structure. The Park and Recreation Department saw fit to incorporate the historic bathhouse into the new design for the Samuel Grand Aquatic Center, with it serving as an equal counterpart to the larger new facility and the inspiration for its design. Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. The next award is for new construction in an historic district. It is no easy task to design a new structure to fit in with existing buildings in an historic district, and the next project has done just that. The West End Historic District is known for a deep-rooted history as the original industrial area as Dallas grew east from the Trinity River. It contains an impressive collection of historic brick warehouse buildings, and the newest building to be added to the district is the 3-story Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum, which relocated from its former home in the West End. To follow district guidelines, the new construction follows the scale, massing, material, and streetscape expression of the existing buildings. The dark brick and copper cladding on the museum's exterior relate to both the district's architecture and to its industrial nature from the early 20th century, but are also different enough to be distinctive as a new construction. The museum first opened in 1977, and in its new space teaches visitors the history of the Holocaust and advancing human rights to combat prejudice. To achieve that, the museum includes interactive exhibits, films, and even an interactive holographic project, which is only one of 2 Holocaust museums with that feature. The experience includes not only the Nazi Holocaust or Shoah, but other genocides that have and are still occurring. One of the museum's prized artifacts is the boxcar, similar to those used to transport people to the death camps, which you will hear about shortly, winning an award in its own right. The design of the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum is meant to express simple elegance. This ensures that every visitor is able to fully experience the purpose of the museum. Their elegance also blends in with and respects the West End Historic District for an outstanding new construction in an historic district. Now I turn the program over to David to present the Special Recognition Awards.
Thank you, Vanessa. And now it's my privilege to present the next set of awards, which recognize the outstanding work that individuals or groups have done to inspire preservation in our community and maintain historic places for the benefit of Dallas. These awards are specially selected by the Preservation Dallas Board of Trustees. The first award is the Gail Toma Patterson Award, named for one of Preservation Dallas's most staunch preservationists and a dedicated past board president and member who passed away unexpectedly in 2009. This award recognizes a group or project for the highest level of restoration, accomplished to accurate original detail. Tonight, this award is presented to the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum for the restoration of the boxcar. We have a video which showcases this extraordinary restoration project.
The Gail Toma Patterson Award was created in 2011 in memory of our former president of the board, Gail Toma Patterson, whose life was tragically lost in 2009. Gail Toma Patterson was a good friend of Preservation Dallas. She was a long-term member and served on the board. She embodied integrity. She never cut corners. She was somebody that saw something from beginning to end, and just somebody that I really looked up to and admired. Gail Toma Patterson's involvement with Preservation Dallas really started when she and her husband Dan purchased a historic home on Swiss Avenue. And of course, we all know the history of Preservation Dallas and Dorothy Savage and Virginia McAllister. There were others that were involved with Preservation Dallas, and Gail really came in right after all of these efforts to create Swiss Avenue Historic District and then shortly thereafter, Munger Place and South Boulevard Park Row. So the city's inner cities were expanding. Preservation Dallas was growing as an organization and really branching out. It was more than just about Swiss Avenue, and Gail Toma Patterson was there really to take Preservation Dallas, expand its efforts and create new initiatives so that it could be an organization that could serve the entire city. So we came up with the idea of creating a special award named in Gail's memory for those projects that really stood above the rest.
I'm Dan Patterson. I am Gail Toma Patterson's husband, and these are our two kids, Carrie Toma Patterson and Cody Patterson. They grew up in this house, which is one of Gail's 3 houses that she did a restoration on.
It's incredibly special, and we're incredibly honored to have this award named after my mom. She was very special, and so many of her qualities we see live on in these houses that she restores, and integrity and precision and attention to detail and kindness, preservation of history, and so many of these remarkable qualities live on in these houses, and so it's so special to be able to continue to honor her year after year. And I know that I know she's a very modest person. I know that she wouldn't want us to be doing this probably, but no, it's really special for us to kind of have the opportunity to think back about her during this time in an organization that was so important to her.
No one really owns a historic house. You just borrow it for future generations, and I think that's kind of the feeling I get when I think about the Gail Toma Patterson Award. It's one of those things that it was a moment in time. She's gone, but it lives on, lives beyond her, beyond us, and it's a legacy that survives, and that it's not even about her. It's about the work, and I think she would really appreciate that. My name is Dan Patterson, and I am here to announce the Gail Toma Patterson Preservation Award winner for this year. Goes to the Dallas Holocaust Museum for its preservation of the boxcar. And the boxcar, as I think you might know, has deep meaning throughout this world as a symbol of the suffering of certain people. And I think it would be very meaningful to Gail that her name was attached to this very significant work. And here is an excerpt from the upcoming documentary about this restoration.
And you'll find that the pieces of the roof slatting in there, they're all numbered.
Yes. So hopefully we can reconstruct that so we're not dragging it. There.
It's a German-built car. It came to Belgium in the 1920s. Belgium was invaded by the Germans. They commandeered all of their rolling stock. They used this car amongst all of those other cars for their own purposes. What we don't know is what that purpose was.
In the 1970s, there were 125 survivors living in the Dallas area. They started meeting and discussing how they could share their testimony with others to educate our community about the Holocaust.
Mike Jacobs, one of the museum's founders, found this boxcar in Belgium, and then the rail car went on an amazing journey by boat and train and truck to get to Dallas. The boxcar was actually taken apart, and they put the boxcar as the entrance to the new Center for Education there in the basement of the Jewish Community Center.
And as far as we know, we are the first museum in the nation that had an authentic World War II era boxcar in our own home. In 2005, they moved us to downtown Dallas so we could reach more families and walk-in visitors, and changed the name to the Dallas Holocaust Museum Center for Education and Tolerance.
They came into a temporary space at 211 North Record Street and struggled to find room in their new temporary space for the boxcar, and made the hard decision to actually separate it into pieces and position only a portion of the boxcar in that new exhibit.
And there we really started to grow. We would see up to 80,000 visitors a year in a tiny 6,000 square foot museum. But it was rented space, it wasn't a permanent home. And so in 2013, we launched the effort to build the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum.
At that point, the design team had a big question: would it be possible to restore and refurbish and recreate the original boxcar? I sent out an APB. Does anyone know conservationists who could really do this job? And luckily we found Ron Siebler. And he presented a proposal wherein we would take every piece apart in the museum at 211 Record Street. He laid them all out and then proceeded to work with artisans and historic welders and craftsmen to reconstruct about a third of the boxcar that was missing, and then bring it all back into what was then a completely bare floor in the under construction Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum, and rebuilt the boxcar from scratch.
And I'm proud to say that on September 18th of 2019, we opened the museum to the public. To be able to bring this boxcar back to its original size and shape and form, and have it be the seminal artifact in our new museum, has been such a gift to us and to the community. And so it's very meaningful that Preservation Dallas has recognized Ron's work, and to be recognized with the Gail Toma Patterson Award is just really incredible. That award represents a group of people in Dallas working to preserve our history. To be in this space, to see visitors walking through, stopping in awe in the boxcar, watching the film, and to see the impact it has on them. It's transformational.
Thank you to Ron Siebler and the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum for that important restoration project, which is so deserving of the Gail Toma Patterson Award. The next award is the Spirit of Preservation Award, which is given to an individual or organization who brings forth the spirit of preservation to inspire and lead others in our community. Tonight, we have two outstanding winners of this award. Our first Spirit of Preservation Award tonight goes to Carolyn Brown, who is an incredibly passionate and talented architectural photographer and artist who has long photographed numerous historic sites in Dallas and across the world. Carolyn received a BA in art education from Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa, followed by an MA in studio arts from Texas Women's University in Denton, and is a graduate of the Art History Center of Arabic Studies at Cairo American University in Egypt. Carolyn began photographing ancient architecture while living in Cairo, Egypt, and her love of photography has taken her all over the world, including to Mexico, Turkey, Lebanon, Rwanda, and Iraq. As a Texan, she has photographed all over the state, including such places as Houston, Fort Worth, Texas A&M, and of course, Dallas. Her work can be found in places such as hotels and corporate headquarters from New York to Texas to Mexico. She has been involved with photographing for over a dozen books and has had over 50 individual exhibits of her work around the country and in Mexico. In Dallas, her work in documenting Fair Park over the years has been extraordinary and has produced some of the most iconic and incredible contemporary images of Fair Park. She even has a marvelous book of just images of Fair Park. Carolyn has also helped Preservation Dallas with numerous photographs of historic sites for our use in programs and events. She also teaches a photography class and uses historic buildings in Dallas as subjects for the class. Her latest class shot Dilbeck buildings in Dallas, which was then made into a Dilbeck exhibit held at ADEX last year. We commend Carolyn for her incredible work in capturing the beauty and majesty of historic places around the world, but we especially recognize her for the image she has taken in Dallas of historic places we hold so dear, and encouraging the spirit of preservation to continue on. The second Spirit of Preservation Award goes to the 10th Street Residential Organization, or TSRO. The 10th Street Historic District is an incredibly important part of African American history in Dallas. After the Civil War, the area was settled by former slaves, and in 1880, the Elizabeth Chapel was established, and in 1886, a school opened. Extensive settlement began when the neighborhood was platted in 1890. By the early 1900s, due mainly to segregation, the settlement grew into a successful, self-sufficient community. However, in the early 1960s, 10th Street was cut off from the rest of Oak Cliff when Highway 35 was built. And during that time, families started moving out. As more and more houses became vacant over the years, the neighborhood struggled. Recognizing its importance, the city designated 10th Street a historic district in 1993. And in 1994, it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. The district is made up of a cohesive collection of modest folk and vernacular dwellings dating from the late 1800s to early 1900s. Unfortunately, the Elizabeth Chapel and many of the historic houses have been lost, the majority of that due to court-ordered demolitions of dilapidated and vacant houses in a misguided effort to clean up the neighborhood. Neighborhood residents formed TSRO to fight to save their neighborhood from further deterioration. They targeted the court-ordered demolitions and regularly attended city meetings to voice their opposition to those demolitions. Preservation Dallas listed 10th Street on its endangered list in 2018, and the National Trust for Historic Preservation followed in 2019 with their 11 most endangered places listing. In August of 2019, the 10th Street Residential Organization, Inclusive Communities Project, and Preservation Dallas successfully advocated for the passage of a city resolution to prevent city resources from being spent on demolition in 10th Street. Earlier this year, TSRO, Inclusive Communities Projects, and Preservation Dallas worked on putting together a grant application to the African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund of the National Trust to help the neighborhood. That was successful, and with the grant, TSRO will be able to hire a staff person to work with the organization on addressing issues in 10th Street, help preserve the remaining historic resources, increase investment in the district. For all of their efforts, the 10th Street Residential Organization is most worthy of the Spirit of Preservation Award. They have fought valiantly to raise awareness about the importance of saving the historic houses in 10th Street and maintaining the historic district status to make sure that the historic significance of 10th Street remains in perpetuity. The next award is the Craftsmanship Award, which recognizes a person or organization whose careful planning and extraordinary craftsmanship honors the past for the benefit of the future. This year, the award focuses on the craft of archival preservation, with the award going to the Dallas Municipal Archives. Many of you may not know about the archives deep in the basement of City Hall, with its incredible collection of materials documenting the growth and history of Dallas. The archives was established in 1985 and now maintains over 2,000 cubic feet of departmental and city records in a variety of forms and formats, including ledgers, manuscripts, and typescripts, maps, photographs, microforms, printed materials, and architectural plans of city buildings and facilities. Among the many collections they have is the Bonnie and Clyde Barrow Gang materials of the Dallas Police Department, the John F. Kennedy Dallas Police Department records relating to the assassination of President Kennedy, and the earliest extant City of Dallas charter. John Slate is the head of archives and has worked diligently for 20 years to organize and catalog the collections and make them accessible online. Normally, the archives is also open for research and will be once again when City Hall is able to open up. John is also an excellent speaker covering the different collections in the archives and has spoken regularly to Preservation Dallas. Christy Neiman was added to the staff about 5 years ago to help John with preserving the collections. According to John Slate, quote, "The archives is an important part of understanding how the city did business in the past, what everything looked like 150 years ago, and how we got to where we are today," end quote. We greatly appreciate John and Christy's work in preserving a valuable part of Dallas's history and making it available to the public to learn from. For their incredible work in the craft of preserving Dallas's important city records, the Dallas Municipal Archives is most deserving of this year's Craftsmanship Award. The next award is for preservation education and recognizes an outstanding effort to teach people about the importance of historic buildings or places. This year, the award goes to the Finding Little Egypt project, led by Dr. Tim Sullivan and Dr. Clive Siegel. In 1883, formerly enslaved Jeff and Hannah Hill purchased a tract of farmland north of the growing town of Dallas. Other families joined them to establish the frontier community, which evolved into a settlement known as Little Egypt. The community was located approximately at the intersection of what is now Ferndale Road and Northwest Highway. The area remained largely rural until the early 1950s, when a tide of new home development replaced the farmland. By 1960, Little Egypt was virtually landlocked by residential lake highlands. In 1961, leaders of the Little Egypt community met with developers and reached an agreement with them to sell the community as a whole, with all the residents being moved to the location of their choice. In 1962, movers arrived, and in one fell swoop, the residents were packed and gone. Once vacated, bulldozers swept away every vestige of Little Egypt away for commercial development, and the history of Little Egypt was lost. In the fall of 2015, Richland College professors Dr. Tim Sullivan and Dr. Clive Siegel began a project with students to reconstruct the history of Little Egypt. The first effort was to locate residents and neighbors for oral history interviews and possible photographs or memorabilia they had left from Little Egypt. The students also delved into the land plats, sorting out the owners of each parcel. A break came when students met with the McCoy family, who had kept artifacts, news clippings, and photos from their childhood in Little Egypt. Besides the rich oral histories they provided, a sketch map of the homes in Little Egypt, names of families, and some ideas to where those former occupants relocated were given by the McCoys. In 2016, a new crop of students embarked on surface collection and limited shovel testing to try and find pieces of Little Egypt in the only remaining piece of unpaved land. With the aid of aerial photographs from 1959 and a current view, they were able to locate landmarks and some measurements to approximate where buildings may have been. The professors were also contacted by two sisters who had lived across the alley and remembered Little Egypt. They even had a digital version of a home movie their parents had made during moving day in 1962, which provided incredible insight and documentation of the community. Due to the amazing work of Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Siegel, and the Richland students, Little Egypt will not be forgotten and will now be recognized by a Texas historical marker. This incredible project has helped to call attention to a little known, yet very important part of African American history in Dallas, and has brought Little Egypt back to life, making it deserving of the Preservation Education Award. Now I would like to turn over the program to John to present the honoree for the evening.
Now is the special part of the evening when we showcase the 2020 Preservation Achievement Awards honoree. This year, we are recognizing the Dallas Park and Recreation Department. for their work in preserving the incredible historic resources located in the parks throughout Dallas. Let's hear about that work.
I joined the park department in 1993 as the superintendent of planning and design. I was promoted to manager. Then in 1999, I was promoted to assistant director and then became the director of the department.
I started with the Park and Recreation Department in August 1994. And then I continued to progress through the Park Department, and I made my way up to an assistant director, and then the board appointed me as the permanent director in April of 2020.
Well, I was appointed to the Dallas Park and Recreation Board in the fall of 2017 by Councilwoman Jennifer Staubach Gates, and I still represent District 13 in addition to serving as president of the board. I was appointed by Mayor Johnson last fall to serve as president, so I've been president for a year.
I was hired as a senior architect, working for Louise Elam and Willis Witters, and it was a huge amount of work related to historic projects. Projects like Rivershawn Park was one of my first that we worked on, and several others like Flagpole Hill, Stevens Park, Lake Cliff, and about 8 or 10 others.
Dallas Park and Recreation Department dates to 1905. That's when the Park Board was created by the Dallas City Council.
The Dallas Park Board is in a very unique situation because it's the only board that has real autonomy and governance authority, unlike other city boards and commissions. We are the governing body, but the department runs the day-to-day operation.
I think Dallas is very unique to be in such a big urban city and have so much preservation, so much open space and parks throughout the park system.
The benefits of parks to Dallas are innumerable. We have seen, certainly during the pandemic, that parks and trails and open space have been incredibly utilized, not only for physical health, but also for mental, social, spiritual, emotional. Because as we were stuck at home, in many cases, one of the few places that were allowed were parks and trails.
What we're really proud of is that all Dallas residents can walk within 10 minutes to their nearest park or green space.
We are blessed in Dallas to have 23,000 acres of parkland and open space, beautiful mature trees, playgrounds, trails for hiking, biking, walking.
We experience a lot of challenges in doing historic restoration. Behind me is a lot of topography, and that stonework goes up that hillside. We experience other things like moving the whole pavilion at Stevens Park 30 feet to get it out of the flood area of that creek where it was eroding away. That meant taking it apart, numbering the stone, and rebuilding it stone by stone.
We also have this incredible asset known as Fair Park, and that's what really makes us, I think, the park department stand out among its other peer cities. No other city in North America has a property or an asset like Fair Park with this astonishing historical legacy that goes back to the 1930s.
I'm a person who loves history, and I do believe when we preserve our facilities that you're able to connect the past with the present, and it allows the future to be able to preserve that past so they don't forget.
You look at beautiful pavilions like the ones at Lake Cliff or Bachman Lake, the stone tables at White Rock or here at Rivershawn. Those are really critical because we need to understand and appreciate history and where Dallas came from. So it's not only teachable, but it's important for the future of the city and for the park system.
Any project needs people who want to take ownership and pride in what it ends up looking like. It's got to be painstakingly approached with an attitude of appreciation and wanting to make it as good as possible when we're all through. The park system started in the late 1800s, early 1900s, and started accumulating these resources. And I think we owe it to our citizens to say this is what our history is, what our legacy is.
The first preservation project probably dates back to 1986, the year of the sesquicentennial when the park department first started to take notice of the assets here at Fair Park and the historical legacy and the historical buildings.
Perhaps the greatest event in the history of Dallas was in 1936, when the Texas Centennial was celebrated with an elaborate fair.
When you look at the Hall of State and all the other buildings throughout here that was constructed during the Centennial, 1936, you are really connecting with history when you come to Fair Park, and it's all around you. This is a unique place. You can look at the Art Deco. It's an amazing place.
Fair Park is so special in countless ways. What it has meant to the city, what it has meant to the state, the importance and architectural significance, historic significance of many of those buildings is really second to none.
And Dallas continued to invest in Fair Park throughout its history. So beginning in the early 1900s, 1910, the State Fair built a livestock coliseum. That was in essence Dallas's first convention center and places where presidents would come to deliver speeches. The city's first art museum, the city's first public auditorium for concerts. And then finally a World's Fair that was built in 1936.
We want to thank the citizens of Dallas for approving Proposition C, in which they funded $50 million for the restoration work here at the Hall of State. You can really see this project really come back to life. When you walk around it, when you walk into different rooms and see the restoration work that's been done, seeing the doors come back to life, things that you didn't notice at first, but now because of the restoration, you can see it.
Sharrock Labello, of course, is identified as the oldest cabin still on its original site in Dallas County. 1840s in Texas. We're still the frontier. If somebody wanted to go to Dallas, it took them 2 days, often on a mule. We had so much structure that predated anything we'd worked with before. We had these hand-hewn logs, the chinking, the structural attachments to each other, the wood pegs, nothing like that in the New Deal era projects. So we had to learn that skill set. We had to bring that expertise to the site. And we had to work with the neighborhood because it was a developing neighborhood all around it. We wanted it to be something that they appreciated and they would appreciate in the future.
We have so many partners. When I checked our count, the Dallas Park and Recreation Department, between large and small partners that support our park system, we have over 200 partners.
We would not have an arboretum that is nationally and really worldwide recognized, or zoo, or Fair Park, without partnerships. Our budget has stayed fairly static despite the additions of parks, playgrounds, dog parks, trails, recreation centers. And so that is always going to be our biggest obstacle, and why we have been able to leverage public-private partnerships to further the public dollar in providing the same level and quality of our parks.
We can look throughout our entire park system and see that we have done a good job of preserving a lot of history throughout our park system.
I'm really excited about the number of the park maintenance staff that love to work on these parks and keep them up and are proud of it. I get reports from people in the maintenance organization about something that needs to be looked at. That something's not right. We need to have somebody take a look at this. So that's exciting to know that they care as much as we do in putting the projects together.
What I see as the future of the park system is adding to the diversity that we already have within our nationally accredited and recognized park system. We need to build on the momentum that we have. We need to be a place from cradle to grave where you can come and enjoy nature, but also live a fit, healthy, and full life.
David Preziosi and I came up with a preliminary list of 26, I think, award-winning projects since maybe 2002, 2003. It recognizes our consultants. It recognizes the commitment of the Park and Recreation Board and the City Council towards these projects. Without that recognition, I don't believe that the preservation program would have been near as successful as it has over the past 3 decades.
Preservation Dallas has been really a wonderful partner to the Park Department for many years. It's the next generation that is going to benefit from that work.
I don't count the awards. When I walk in every day, I see the Preservation Achievement Awards on the wall, and I keep thinking, gosh, what are we going to do next year? What are we going to do next year? We got to have another project. So it's kind of whets the appetite to keep looking for stuff to do. And I've got a long list.
Preservation Dallas is pleased to honor the Dallas Park and Recreation Department for their incredible work featured in the video, and would like to present the honor to John Jenkins, Director of the department, to say a few words.
I would like to thank Preservation Dallas for the Dallas Park and Recreation Department being selected as this year's honoree. We could not have received this type of recognition if it wasn't for the citizens of Dallas, the Dallas Park and Recreation Department, the Dallas City Council, and the men and women who work for this great park system. So once again, I want to thank Preservation Dallas for this distinguished recognition.
Congratulations to all of the amazing 2020 award winners, and thank you to our wonderful sponsors for helping us bring the awards to you in a virtual format to celebrate the power of preservation, and to each of you for joining us. We hope that everyone enjoyed the presentation tonight, and good night to all of you from our house to your house.